one of the core themes of Raya and the Last Dragon was trust. And in this video, we're going to do a little discussion on the themes, what it means to us, how we sort of perceived it in the movie and through the characters. For you guys, how did the theme come across? Did it come across a little too strong? Was it too preachy, or was it at the right spot for you guys?
To be honest, it's a little bit more on the preachy side, especially with Sisu. Is that her name? Okay, good.
Yeah, Sisu.
Making sure I'm saying it right. I was supposed to say Sifu for whatever reason.
Sifu.
Yeah, Sifu, like a teacher, which I guess you can say she was. But yeah, it was a little preachy, especially how she came about it, where she was all like, well, you just gotta trust somebody. You gotta let go. All it takes is the first step. And they had that quote unquote, I forgot what was that quote she said, but it was like even in the trailer.
You gotta take the first step even if you're not ready, or
something I don't know if it was like that, but it was something along the lines of, see, maybe that is the problem. Maybe it's because you don't trust people, or something like that.
I know what you're talking about.
The way she said it,
like, so, maybe the world is broken because you don't trust people.
Something like that. Yeah, so it came a little bit preachy, then again, but to be fair, it wasn't too, I didn't hate it for the most part. I still enjoyed it, and like in theory it was the issue, and we saw, as far as why she doesn't trust people, it was really, really obvious. You see your father being this kind of trusting dude, and then get screwed over.
So here's the thing, right? A character sort of preaching doesn't necessarily mean the movie itself was preaching that theme, but in this case, I do feel like it was a little bit preachy, at least for the end, because it seemed too much for me in terms of the story. But in terms of like Raya's character, I think it was done pretty well.
Yeah.
Like her sort of realization and whatnot. So why don't we go around and ask ourselves exactly what we thought was the lesson, because I feel like we might have perceived it all differently. Because like for me, the main theme, the main lesson was, okay, you have to be careful. You do have to, like, you can't be naive like little Raya and just let people in and let them know your biggest secrets. You have to do it at a certain level. Like you have to be cautious of it, but at the same time you do still have to keep open and be able to trust others. That's what I got from it. How about you guys? Like, OC?
So as far as just what I got from the movie, as far as what is the movie trying to portray, I think that based on how everything wraps up, it felt like the purpose of the movie, the goal of the movie, was to communicate that trust is the most important thing. That's what it seemed like, because at the end of the day, it's what trust saved the world, and once they trusted, everything went back to being good, and there were no consequences, and yada yada yada. And it seemed off for me, because they did have several instances where trust was broken early on in the film, but it doesn't seem to.
Right. So the conclusion wasn't quite cohesive with the other parts of the film.
Right. So it's very difficult for me to properly understand what the film is really trying to communicate. Because for me, it seems almost like a super idealistic. You know how people have certain idealistic views of the world that we live in, and like their solution to the problems are it's so simple. Everybody just needs to, teach people not to be bad. And it's like that's a nice thought, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the people who break your trust, or the people that do bad things, it's not like they don't know that the thing that they're doing is bad. Like the solution has to be a little bit more sophisticated than just teach people not to do bad things.
Right. It's the idealistic view is a bit too naive for it to ever work.
Right. So, and I felt like this was kind of, at least the ending seemed like it was made by the people who have that perspective, and it just came across as less than satisfactory.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Do you guys agree with OC, or do you have a different?
Yeah, I think when OC said that it's not like completely clear and cohesive, because it does seem like out of everything they're saying, like trust is the most important thing. But I mean, for me, after seeing it like a second time, I think the biggest thing is just like trust is a very like powerful thing, like trust, validation, being able to kind of like just, I don't know, like give people like chances, I guess, because, you know, all the bad decisions that were made in this film weren't done by characters that were necessarily evil. It was all from a place of like desperation. And that's what we can kind of like think about right now too, is like no one ever like, you want to believe that no one just is born bad and like turns to bad decisions out of like evil in their heart, but you know, you want to believe that it comes from a place of desperation, and that if you can sympathize or empathize, maybe, you know, people can come together and find a solution. And in this situation, it was kind of a very like simplified solution. It was like, oh, just trust each other, which I think they could have done a better job of, like, you know, like you said, maybe find a more robust solution that, like, you know, was a little more complicated than just like trusting each other and putting the stone back together. But I think
I mean, the way you put it just now is actually very, I like it. Like,
yeah, I think that's what I got from it watching it the second time. And there are definitely like a lot of nuances in Neymari's character specifically that kind of made me think these things right now. But I think, yeah, the overall lesson is just that trust is very powerful. And when you give that trust to someone who is struggling, if you empower someone who is desperate, then they can kind of like be a more realized person. You know what I'm saying? Which is a very powerful thing. So
yeah.
I
like that takeaway.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with it too. I feel like the more blatant message that they were trying to get across is trust, and probably the second one mainly is communication, because everybody's all like, they have their own different tribes, and it's seen with like their map, like they're all split out, heart, tail, spine, whatever it is, and they're all isolated. They don't talk to each other. There's no communication because there is no trust in like trying to communicate to each other. And I feel like in terms of the film portraying it, it was very preachy. It kind of, I wished it went on a deeper level and, you know, touched on different levels of trust, but it also had like a cynical tone to it as well, with like Raya and Amari trying to trust each other and trying to bridge that gap.
That's part of the reason why I like Raya's character so much, because like she's sort of the character that's not naive and understands, like you can't, but a little too much to the point where she can't trust anyone. But that's not necessarily true. She trusts like the baby and
it's people who have earned her trust. You know that
exactly.
Like and for her, it's a very realistic, like situation that anyone would be, you know.
That's
replicating.
why I resonated with her character a lot.
Yeah.
I guess one way to look at it is not necessarily that the movie is about like having trust, but more letting go of distrust, because it's more of the distrust that they have for each other that causes a lot more of the problems.
True.
So it's like when they let go of distrust, then they're able to achieve a greater significance. But obviously the way it's framed, especially with Sifu and her family, because the scene where
Sisu,
oh, I said it wrong again. The family where she's with her she's with her the last 5 dragons, and they give her trust to the gem. So I guess in that context, trust was a big part. But I definitely felt like distrust, letting go, was the main issue as far as Rayos.
I can get behind that.
I
think
love
that's
it.
true.
I love it. Yeah.
I agree. But I still feel like it was a very like childish way of trying to get the message across, because obviously, you know, in real world situations, that's not going to happen. Like we have these emotions, and there's no way everybody's going to come together in the end, similar to like situation now, you know, and what's happening now with like the pandemic. But I wish
You mean
it
the
was
political landscape, pretty much.
yes, yeah, but like just in general, like it's hard to trust people, and it's hard to let go of distrust, especially if you have experience of someone like backstabbing you.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the movie is about, right? It's just learning to let go of that distrust, like Juku just said, and also understanding the power and the strength that trust holds, like Crystal said. I think those two are very nuanced ways of seeing the message, for sure. Like, I like them. It makes me think more about it.
They could have really leaned into like more things. Like, I mean, in the beginning, even when she was a kid, Raya kind of had these preconceived notions and like judgments of the other tribes, right? She had kind of like prejudices against them.
True.
And they could have leaned into that. They could have really highlighted like the kind of turmoil and tension between the tribes a little more, and shown like, oh, this is what we think about each other, and like, you know, like it's. I think
even
it's,
yeah, even in just her character, like if she, it would make sense if she ended
was
up
a
being
little
like
more
a
like prejudiced,
raging racist against the other.
I don't want to say it, but like it could have been an allegory for that. I don't know if I feel like they could have leaned into it. Maybe they had plans for it, but then they like took a step back instead, maybe to like not make it so similar to things that are happening right now and make it a bummer. But it really is very similar to what's going on right now, because the first time that all the dragons got rid of all the, what are they called? All of the freaking...
The Durin?
The Durin,
Yeah, the shadow guys. You know, she was saying like, oh, it was supposed to be like a big, like crazy event that would bring anyone together. But instead, you know, everyone kind of was for like, we're going to take care of our own, you know, which is kind of like what's happening now. And that like kind of made things
I think
worse to begin with.
I think it was more like, we want the power for ourselves. That's the way I saw it. Like each tribe just fought each other to get a hold of the gem.
Yeah, and then
because
you can say,
they thought that it would bring them luxury, wealth,
prosperity.
whatever it is.
But I mean, which they had. I think Heart was the most prosperous out of all the tribes. They didn't really accentuate it, but I got that from it, because Nimari was hungry. Like she said, like, we don't have rice. Like they were like Fang was getting overpopulated basically, which is like a big deal. Like they didn't really lean into that, but going hungry is like not good for any kind of
they introduced a lot of key points at the beginning that they kind of just did away with at the end.
Yeah, they just glossed over it.
Right, like are the lands still hungry? Because the problems that were there beforehand are still there now, even after the whole trust exercise of the movie. But so let's just say those problems were solved somehow. Okay, so then what happens next? Like really, they're only unified so that they can take power from other surrounding places because they're stronger as a force, like in real life. Like that's the reason why like places tend to unify. And so it's like it's cool, but at the same time I do feel like there were other interesting things that they could have tackled that would have made it that much better, right?
Yeah, they could have shown like the lands like sharing resources and like really making an effort to like understand each other, because it's like, you know, like I said, it's very similar to real life events that are happening now. Like you're gonna distrust maybe someone that's not in your culture or core group even, you know, and you're gonna like misunderstand their personal life circumstances and be like all for your own self.
Yeah, I mean that's
but-
just
yeah.
life. But I
That's-
do wish they showed that, and
Yeah.
also in the beginning like showed people suffering, because I feel like that would have made
Pretty
more
much.
of an impact, you know, like to show these people like not eating rice or whatnot. But also that could have just been a tactic that Namari used to get, you know, sympathy from Raya.
Maybe.
I want to
I
believe
think she was
it's
telling the
not.
truth.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like that.
That's just me being cynical.
No, yeah, but you saying that also shows that they didn't really go into the complexities of like, I don't know, class and you know, disparity basically, which they should have, I think.
Yeah.
It was like
Great
more
points,
like an
great
afterthought.
points.
It's like Neymar was like, "Oh, I haven't had rice," and then like, "You're right, OC, like we forgot about it," and we're like, "What should
Yeah.
you tell me?"
So
It's a good thing. It's a good thing you rewatched it, Crystal, because like these details are actually pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in the
I mean, I
conversation.
know you guys remember them. It's just that, like you said, so much happened that was like not important to the theme.
it
That
just
like
overshadowed those things, yeah.
It overshadowed the nuances of like, especially Neymari's character. I think who does come off as like very like cold-hearted, but you know she has her
Yeah.
motivations.
It's sort
So,
of like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it. Go for it.
Well, it's just a small point. It's sort of like Catan. I wish they did show what resources each section had and didn't have, and then they could have like come together like that too.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah. That'd have been interesting. I think so. From based on this movie, how do you guys personally apply it? What does trust look like in your own life? Like for me, and maybe this is for most people, but for me personally, I think that there's a certain baseline level of trust that you give to people just off rip. Where, you know, if you hire somebody to do a job, you trust them that they're going to do their job. So like basic stuff like that, you know, go on a train with people, you trust that everybody's going to be minding their own business for the most part, and nobody's going to bother each other. But I think naturally you change your level of trust based on people's behavior. If somebody gives you a reason to not trust them, it no longer becomes wise to trust them.
Yeah,
And
if somebody gives you a gift, man, you're gonna trust them a bit more.
that's true. So
I don't
it's
know.
according to Sisu,
like according to Sisu.
Sifu Sisu.
Right. I think it's interesting to think about because what do you guys think about that basically? How do the themes in this movie apply to
I
your
mean
own life?
that's definitely true. What you just said, like you're not gonna. You'd have to be extremely naive to give trust equally to everyone. Like obviously there are people out there that are not looking out for your best interests, so trusting them would be foolish. And unfortunately, there are just people out there who are like that. They only care about themselves, or they're out for. Or they want to see you go down, you know? Like,
right.
Yeah.
I almost feel like this movie would have been better if they had a more villainous villain who they were like, okay, you can't trust this person for whatever reason. Like maybe they tried to trust that person and
make the message a bit more nuanced, right?
Right, exactly.
Or I wish they went into like the drones. I think that's what they're called.
You got it. It's the drones.
Yeah, I really wish they went into that and like the meaning behind that. They like briefly, Sisu said like a sentence about why they're there and they're the opposite of dragons. But I really wish they dived more into that because it's
It's too
has
easy.
more of that.
The drones are weak
it's-
for being just like a creature that wants
Yeah.
to kill, like turn them into statues.
It's too easy. They're just this like depersonified force. So
I was gonna say.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say it's interesting because I feel like older Disney films, or at least most animated films that I remember, they usually would have like again the magical character who has a belief, and then they do challenge that, and even at the end, the magical character is like, "Yeah, you're right. Maybe you can't do that." And I didn't feel the same with Sisu, where it was like, "Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe you can't trust people." And I thought that that's where they were going with, especially with the moment where she trusts that lady and then she almost basically gets killed. I mean, gets stoned, and then it wasn't for Raya to save her. at the end there. I thought she was going to go on that route
Yeah.
where she's going to start distrusting people, but the whole time she was like, no, girl, I'm going to trust all the time. So it's very interesting. But yeah.
Let's go ahead and close off with our personal, like OC mentioned, his personal views on the topic of trust. And yeah, but for me, like, it's basically what OC said, like the whole thing about different people, different levels of trust, behavior for sure. Generally, my philosophy is just to keep open arms and an open heart to people who you don't know yet, and then depending on what they do, like that level changes, right?
Yeah.
So
I think
it's
I think for
Yeah, go
me,
ahead.
like, it just depends on the context, where I'm meeting these people, who these people are. If they're friends of my friends, then I have a little bit, like, more trust, because then it's like, oh, I trust my friends, and they should have, like, also acquaintances that they trust, too. So it really depends on context. Like, if it's in, like, a business setting or something like that, or just someone I don't know, then I have my guard up. If it's someone I don't know giving me a gift, I would be like, why are you giving me a gift? Like, what is the meaning? What is your
For your
meaning
birthday.
behind it? You know, it depends. Like, if I don't know you and you're giving me a gift on my birthday, like, who are you to give me a gift when you don't know me? You know? So, so like, for me,
but it's for your birthday.
I guess I have a more,
I know it's your
like,
birthday.
yeah, but I have a more, like, distrust.
A cautious.
Yeah, very
I'd say
cautious,
yeah,
very kind
skeptical.
of like, yeah, cynical view
Yeah,
of the
like-
world.
What kind of stranger just shows up to your birthday? That should be the main thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just different contexts, different situations. Like, if it's at a friend's party, if it's a coworker gathering or whatever, it just depends. But I do have, like, a minimal level of trust that I give to people that I meet. So, similar to
Okay.
you guys.
Yeah.
But I guess just to close it off for me, just don't trust blindly.
Yeah, I agree with Christine. It's very situational. I think this movie tried to get into that with like the old lady that like was just there to stone Raya, but she was, you know, as an afterthought, she was just like, "Oh my god, that I can't believe that lady was gonna hurt me," and then we forgot about that. But it is, I think they tried to make it so that it was like, oh, like trust is situational, but it's still like a very powerful thing. And that's what I got from it, is like being able to empower people is really important, especially if it's like given the opportunity, that person can do like good
Right.
things, right?
So is that also your philosophy?
I would like it to be. I was gonna say, like Christine, I don't immediately trust like all the people I just meet, but then I feel
Even
like
if they're friends of friends?
yeah. And I feel like that's held me back, like in the past, you know, kind of having maybe a judgment or like a preconceived notion of someone. I'm not racist. I just like sometimes I'm like, I don't know.
Had to
I'll-
put that out there.
but
Neither
it's
am
like,
I.
but like you know, I've been burned.
There are
but like,
Yeah.
but you know, I know that, you know, everyone goes through different situations, and I would like to be able to be a more positive person, I guess. And I really
Yeah.
do admire, I don't know, Sisu's ability to just kind of bring the best out in people, and I think we should all strive for that, I guess.
Just to add on to that just a little bit, it's also the way society has built us, I feel like. So that adds on to,
yeah,
you know.
I
Yeah.
would say that, not to be quote unquote sexist, but I do feel like females, from your guys' experience, you kind of have to be a little distrustful just to protect yourself, because if you're too open,
Yeah, that's
you can
very
be harmed.
true.
You know
So-
what? That's true.
So
Like, we can't walk around at night, you know, by ourselves. We
Yeah.
gotta walk around with our keys, like, in between
Yeah.
our knuckles. So you hit the
yeah,
nail on the head for that one.
yeah. But as far as me, when it comes to trust, I like this quote that I heard from my friend, and he's like he loves poker, and they have a saying which is called "trust everyone but drop the cards," which basically the whole the idea is that you don't want to become paranoid and just always be distrusting people for the sake of it, but at the same time, again, don't be stupid. Like, clearly, if you see some patterns of something that's off, You got to be able to like let go. You got to be able to be like call it out, because if you don't stop it, it's just only gonna get worse. So that's the way I look at it, where it's like I don't want to come, like, even when I meet people, I mean, I never want to always assume, I always want to assume the best and assume that people are not trying to get out me or trying to hurt me. But at the same time, again, behavior, like you guys say, if you see something off, you got to be like, okay, I ain't messing with that. So that's how I feel about trust. So
Nice. Yeah, the Bible says to be as to be as cunning as a serpent and as harmless as doves. So I think that's a pretty good thing. It's like, be very vigilant of people, and you don't necessarily have to be open and trustful to everybody, but for yourself, because you can only really control yourself, and so as far as you can control it, be as gentle as possible with people.
All right. Well, these were very nice closing thoughts, pieces of wisdom from everyone. All right. Let us know in the comments like what your thoughts are on the main theme, the main lesson of Raya, and we'll check it out.
Cool.
Later.
Later.